Go and open your book to page 249. Today's lesson is to identify roots of real numbers. So basically, you want to solve the equation that involves, with the real numbers. And again, this is review from the Algebra 1, just using the square root technique. So let's go to example on page 249. So example A, you want to solve, so you got x squared equal to 36. So what you do is you take, in this case, right, if you have perfect square on the left-hand side, so again, the key is you want to make sure it's perfect square. Then you can take the square root on both sides. So when you take the square root, okay, so take the square root on both sides. Now, when you take the square root of the variable, you need to get plus or minus on the other side. Okay, so you have to put plus or minus. So this is the common mistake. A lot of students will forget the plus or minus. Okay, so on the test, again, a lot of students are going to forget. So make sure you remember plus or minus. So the square root and square, they are inverse of each other, so they cancel out. So you're going to get x equal to plus or minus 6. Okay, and that's your answer. Okay. Now, so this is a square root technique. Now, you also can, you already learned the factoring technique, right? So if you were to do the factoring technique, okay, then you have to minus 36 on both sides. So you got x squared minus 36 equal to 0, and you do the factoring, right? And you solve. So you got x equal to negative 6, x equal to 6, right? And so, same answer, right? Okay. So again, if you have perfect square already, okay, on this side, and you have no more variable on that side, then it's quicker if you just do the square root technique, okay? Okay. So let's go to B. So you got 2x squared plus 8 equal to 0. So first thing you want to do is you can go and divide by 2 to lower your number. So you got x squared plus 4 equal to 0. Okay, and this is not factorable, so you can you can minus 4 on both sides. And so when you take the square root, now you have a problem, okay, because you got square root of a negative number. Okay, so later on you're going to learn about imaginary numbers. So right now you haven't learned it yet. So at this point, it's not quite true that when you say no solution, it's not quite true, okay, because there are solutions, but it's not real, okay. So you're going to learn about imaginary solution later on. So right now, when you get to this point, the answer would be no real solution. Okay, so again, so there are solutions, but they are imaginary, okay, but you haven't learned it yet. So as of right now, you just write down no real solution. So don't write down no solution, because that's not true. If you just have no solution, that is not true, because there are two solutions, but both are imaginary. Okay. In case if you're curious, okay, the answer would be x equal to plus or minus 2i. Okay. So that would be your answer. But you haven't learned that yet. So right now, just write down no real solution. Again, if you write down no solution, you would be wrong, because that is not true. Okay. There are two solutions, but it's not real. Okay, it's imaginary. Okay, so let's go to page 250. Now, when you have a higher root, okay, you need to know how to simplify. So on page 250, when you have the nth root, so this is the index. So this is your index. Again, all these are reviewed from your Algebra 1. Okay, so this number over here is index, and this is the radicand. Okay, so this one over here. So this is the radicand. So you need to know how to simplify some of this stuff. Okay, so let's go over some examples on page 251. Okay, so let's do number 2. Start with A. So you got square root of 4 squared. So normally, if there's no negative, everything is very simple. Okay, the square and the square root will cancel out. So your answer would be just equal to 4. Right? Again, the square and the square root, they will cancel out. Now, when you get to 2b, you got square root of negative parentheses 4 square root of that. Now you have to be careful when you have negative. You have to watch your order. Okay. So over here, if you just cancel out the square and the square root, you're going to get negative 4, and it will be incorrect. Okay. Because over here the order is you have to square this first. So the easy thing to remember is if it's even exponent, then the negative is going to get canceled out. Okay. So again, if you work it out, you're going to get square root of 16. You have to work it out first. Then the square root of that, you take the principal root. Okay, when you take the square root of number, you just take the positive. So the answer would be 4. Okay, let's go to 2C. So again, if you have even, just get rid of the negative and you can cancel after that. Okay, for 2C, you have cube root of negative 4 to the cube. Okay. So the way to remember is if the exponent has even number, then the negative will cancel out. Okay, if it's odd number, then everything stays the same. Okay, if it's negative, it gives you negative. If positive, it gives you positive. So in this case, you can just cancel out, so the answer will be negative 4. Okay. Okay, so you can if the exponent is odd number, then it just cancel out and it stay the same. Okay, but if it's even, it will always give you the positive. Okay, let's go to 2D. Okay, so again, if you have an odd exponent, then the sign will stay the same. So the cube and the cube root cancels out, and you got negative 4. Okay. Okay. Now there are a couple more things you have to be aware of. Okay. When you have higher root, okay, let's say if you have like a square root of like a y square. Okay. So you know that, again, remember what I say, right? When you have an even exponent, it's going to be always positive. Okay. So therefore the answer would be not just y, because y can be positive or negative, right? Okay. Remember, when you have square, it will always positive. To ensure that, you need to have absolute value. Okay. So when you have square root of something square, you have to have absolute value. So to ensure that this would be positive. Okay. So just be aware of that. But if you have this kind of situation, then you don't need absolute value because your answer would be y squared, right? And y squared would be always positive. So you don't need absolute value after that. Okay. Okay, now let's go and do more examples. So let's say if you go to number 22, number 20, okay, on page 251. So you got z to the 4 plus 5 equal to 14. So again, this is a perfect square, so you can isolate that. So minus 5. So you got z to the 4 equal to 9. So you can take the square root. Okay, so you're going to get z squared equal to 3. Z squared equal to negative 3, right? Take the square on both sides. Okay, so take the square, you get that. But this one, you know that it's going to be no real solution, right? Again, right now we only deal with real answers, right? So this one will be no real number, no real solution. So this one you don't have to worry about. Okay, so you have to just focus on this one. So you can take the square root again. So when you take the square root again, you're going to get plus or minus square root of 3. Right? Again, when you take the square root, you're going to get plus or minus. And the reason I separate, so because you have to keep going, right? And so this is it. So right now, this one is no good. But in the future, when you start to learn about the imaginary number, you have to work these things out also. Okay. Okay, so let's go and do some practice.